Here's Roque's first touch. Lucas in the corner. He's got to be amped up. Pereira's drive. It's a goal! From downtown! Pereira makes it 1-0. Wow.
What's going on, everybody? This is MASL Monday. I'm Alex Bastiavansky. Welcome to everyone listening on Sirius XM channel 157 and watching on MASL TV, on Twitch, and on YouTube. And oh man, first of all, happy Easter, Ramadan, Passover to everyone. Hope everyone had some great family time this past weekend, including this man right here who's joining me today, my guest from the KC Comets, broadcaster Erik Bergrud. Erik, how you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well, Alex. How are you? It's playoff time in North America.
At playoff time, loving it, man. We've got a lot to cover today because we had the play-in game, first of all, for the West. The play-in game for the East, 4 versus 5, happening as we speak. Your KC Comets on the blue turf in Utica. So we can't really say too much about that, but we will go a little bit into the matchup at the very least to get your perspective a little bit later on in the show. But we're going to cover it. Playoffs today for everyone, kicking off over the past week. So Erik, let's start with the play-in game in the West between Tacoma and Mesquite. Interesting one because, here's a Mesquite team that really backed into the playoffs. They won that last game of the regular season that they had to win against the Empire Strikers. But it's a Mesquite squad that had lost 8 of their last 10 games heading into the playoffs. So Tacoma might have been seen to having a bit of an advantage in this matchup. Although Mesquite, last week we had Eddie Prescarich on the show. He felt that Mesquite was maybe starting to turn the corner at just the right time. So were you shocked by the fact that it was Mesquite taking that game?
Shocked, no. Mildly surprised, yeah. So Tacoma, for me, is a better road team than they are a home team for some reason. They circle the wagons when they play on the road, but I thought they had played well enough down the stretch that they would win at home. So I picked Tacoma to win. Mesquite consistently this year has been a difficult team on the road. A lot of young guns on that team, and they came out early. They came out strong, and Tacoma couldn't battle back in the second half. So kudos to Mesquite for figuring that one out.
And Luis Morales, 2 goals, 2 assists, he's the reigning MVP, Rookie of the Year, pardon me, until the new one comes out for this year. But from last season, made the move to Mesquite this season. Fair to say that he had an absolutely outstanding season. He began red hot, injured in January, so tailed off a bit, but really finished up the season strong, didn't he?
Well, and I think Mesquite has something, their fans for sure have something to look forward to. They have a core nucleus of young players, all of whom can score a lot of goals, and I would expect this team to be competitive for many years going down the road.
Led by the great Tattoo, of course. And so anyway, they made it in. They made it past the play-in game. And the reward for that was to face off against the San Diego Sockers. Thanks a lot, right? Nice kick in the butt, but they go up against the Sockers, and I think we expected San Diego to win. I'm not sure if we thought it was going to be the blowout that it was in both these games, but San Diego takes it 7-1 and 8-0. So your thoughts on the series that got swept away pretty quick there?
I expected San Diego to want to make a statement, and they made a statement. And what's nice about that format is you get a chance to go on the road, make a statement, and then the other team knows they're going to have to go travel to your arena and somehow pull out a miracle, and it was not meant to be. Terrific goalkeeping. I know we'll be talking a lot about Boris Pardo later in this episode, but also some of the names you come to expect in this series. Craig Childs comes up big, but they've spread the ball around. And one of the, I guess you could call blessings and curses of the Sockers, Alex, is there are a lot of players contributing, both on the offensive side and the defensive side.
Absolutely.
And some of their players get short shrift when you think about Player of the Year awards, just because from top to bottom on that roster, it's a dominant team.
It is. That is something we are going to talk about later. And we've talked to Craig Yelston about this, of course, on other shows as well, who, screams it from the rooftops that there are so many guys on this team that really should be up for the big awards and should get more attention, right? But 7-1 in that first game, in Mesquite, 8-0, the shutout. I mean, super impressive. And Pardo, of course, not allowing a goal in either game. He was actually sitting on the bench when they scored that one goal. The Outlaws did the one goal they got in game one. Just unbelievable performance. And let's talk about Craig Childs for a second. That second game, 3 goals, 2 assists, including a half volley, absolute banger he scored. Craig Childs, the captain. I mean, he's a guy should definitely be every year in the running and being talked about as a possible league MVP, even though he's on a team of such superstars.
Well, in that game, happy Easter to the Sockers too, because they played at home on Easter. There were 2 goals that Childs scored that impressed me. One was a long pass with 7 seconds remaining in the first half. They kissed off the glass, and he was standing right there in the box and tapped it in. That is somebody who knows where he needs to be on the field at all times, so kudos to him. But the last goal he scored was an absolute banger, as you said. And in fact, he had his third goal was a free kick banger where he put it, the wall was getting set up, they were repositioning. He's like, forget you, I'm just going to put it top left corner. Nothing that Pollo could do. And so all 3 of their goals show I'll use the term craftsman. He understands his craft as a target in this league. He knows where to be. He knows how to come up in the key moments, and look for him to try to make a statement in every series the rest of the way.
We're going to get on this stats-wise, and we should have had this today, but before we started the show, producer Phil Levanco had a great point. We need to find out Craig Childs' points pre- and post-stash. Because, it came on, I think it was around mid-season that the stash came back, and the man's been on fire. So we are going to have to pull that stat at some point to figure out more points before or now that he's got the stash. So we're going to figure that one out. Our crack stats staff will have to get on that one. But San Diego, one more thing. 1 goal in 2 games. We know how good this defense is, but that is a massive accomplishment, Erik, and says something about the defense on that Sockers team.
Well, it absolutely does, and I think the defense gets overlooked. Pardo gets a lot of the credit, and he deserves a lot of the credit, not just because he makes great saves, but he also sets the team in front of him so well, and there's not really a stat on that. We talk about Childs a lot, Tavoy Morgan a lot, Brandon Escoto, the list goes on, but it's that defense that just makes other teams wither, and to only give up 1 goal, and that goal being a shootout goal in a 2-game series, that's impressive.
Yeah, huge stuff. Just one more thing about Mesquite, despite going down hard, would you call this season a success? Their first season back since 2019-2020 was their first season in the league, a season cut short by COVID. Then they sat out the last couple of seasons. Would you consider this year a success for them?
I think for me, absolutely, because I didn't know what to expect. If you had asked me at the beginning of the season, rank teams 1 to 7 in that conference, I definitely wouldn't have had them as high as where they were. And so kudos to Tattoo, kudos to the players that they picked up. And when I heard that Pollo Cortez was returning to Texas from St. Louis, this team was going to be different and maybe not what the Mesquite was a couple seasons back. Good for them this year, and hope that Outlaws fans feel like they have something to look forward to when the next season rolls around.
Absolutely. Let's just get this in there for everyone. You are listening to MASL Monday. I'm Alex Bastiavansky on Sirius XM channel, XMFC, channel 157. Every Monday, you can listen to the show 10 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Pacific Time. And a reminder, you can also watch MASL on all games on Twitch live and the archive. And the show, of course, you can watch on MASL TV on YouTube and on Twitch. And really quick, exciting news as well right now. MASL fans in Colorado, Arizona, and Maryland, you can now wager on the MASL using Betfred in partnership with league partners Alt Data, with more states to come. To find out more information, head to maslsoccer.com. And I am joined today, of course, by Erik Bergrud, part of that awesome KC Comets broadcasting crew, along with Nick Vassos, who are hoping that they're going to get to call another game this season, because as we speak, the Comets are facing off against Utica. Before we get to that, in the playing game, of course, let's talk about Chihuahua and Monterey, who are playing the 2 versus 3 seeds right now in the West for the right to advance to face the Sockers in the Western Conference Final. Right now, it's Chihuahua up 1-0 against Monterey, although they are playing as well as we speak. That game is going on. So we can only talk about the one game that's completed, but it was an 8-4 game at Arena Monterey. Erik, your thoughts on that contest?
Chihuahua has shown all year they can be a dominant road team. They have played extremely well in Monterey all regular season. They played each other 6 times. And this was a team that didn't show any fear going into Monterey. I thought they played well in the first half. And coming in the second half, it was tied up. And ultimately, the speed, the technique on that team was too much for Monterey. And slowly they piled on the goals there in the fourth quarter to make it 8-4. This Chihuahua team, we saw last year what they're capable of. We saw them give the Sockers all they could in the playoffs last year. But they have to hold service at home, and Monterey came into Chihuahua in the regular season and won there. So it's going to be interesting because we're looking at a 60-minute game with the potential of a knockout game. That's a tall order for Monterey, but Monterey has a lot of talent on that team as well.
They do, and they're in the Lions Den as we speak in Chihuahua, playing there for the game and then possibly a mini game. Is that for you? I've asked this question before, Erik, but is that the most intimidating atmosphere in the MASL?
Well, I think it is. And so you can look at attendance figures, and kudos to Kansas City fans for leading the league in attendance, but that's not the same as how loud, how crazy it is. You think about Chihuahua, you think about Utica as well, that these are places that the fans are so intense, the atmosphere is so strong, it just raises the adrenaline level for everybody. I know it does for Chihuahua. Hopefully, Monterey will build off of that as well, so we can have an entertaining back and forth match. Much
smaller stadium as well, so they are right on top of you in Chihuahua. And yeah, it's really intense. So let's talk about, let's go back for 1 second then, because the winner of this series is going to face San Diego. You've seen San Diego this year. You've watched them all season long. Tell us your take then, Erik, on, for you, if you were matching up against the Sockers, what it takes to beat them and what you would tell your team.
So keep in mind, this is a 3-team series. So what I'm going to tell you is, or a 3-game series, what I'm telling you is how I would approach a 3-game. Right. You're going to get game 1 at home. It's an absolute must win. So you can afford to play your game, but you need to let it out all on the field. The trick is, assuming you've won that game 1, then you have to go into San Diego and figure out, what do I do? So there's 2 different answers. First of all, you better bring more than 16 players because you're going to need some fresh legs potentially to come out there in the knockout game. And so for sure, I'd be bringing 18 to 20 players, assuming you can afford it, with me to San Diego. Second is you have to play extremely disciplined in that game 2, which means you need to be compact defensively and pick your opportunities to score forward. That's not a guarantee of a win, but if you try to play a run and gun game there at Pechanga Arena, you're going to get hammered. But that being said, is if you play smart in that second game, even if you lose, you should still have some legs there for that knockout game, and theoretically making some smart substitutions of players you're bringing in only for that game. We saw in the finals last year, Florida against San Diego, that Phil Salvaggio had players in mind for that knockout game. I remember Brian Farber in particular getting warmed up just in case they needed him for that knockout game. Yep. I think road teams have to have that same mentality, is we need a game plan for games 2 and 3. The problem with this, Alex, is if San Diego comes in and smacks you at home, then you have all sorts of problems heading into Pechanga.
And you're just so, oh man, you're down. you're down emotionally. Yeah, we saw last year, of course, Florida went. I mean, Chihuahua had the game plan last year. Chihuahua won the first game at home, then went to San Diego for the last 2, forced the mini game, ultimately went down. But that was an incredible series last year. So they sort of set the blueprint, like you're talking about, how to take on the 2-time defending champions. Let's move to the East then, because we've got one series that has happened, as we mentioned. The play-in is happening right now, but 2 versus 3, Baltimore against Florida went down. And that was a fascinating series. There's a lot to talk about in terms of that. Game 1 in Lakeland, and the Blast took that one. It was a 4-3 game. Then they come back in game 2, and a lot of us predicted the reverse. We thought Florida might take game 1, and then at the fortress that is SAQ Arena, Baltimore would win 2 and then 3 if they had to go to the mini game. But it was the Blast taking the first game in Florida, then coming back, and game 2 was absolutely nobody. If someone saw the score line on this, they were shaking their head. 14-1 for the Tropics. So take us through what you saw. First, game 1, real quick, which is the 4-3 win for the Blast. What did you see in that one?
So what's interesting is it's on Twitch, right? So I'm watching the chat as well as the game, and it just fascinates me that some, not all, some Baltimore fans weren't wanting Vanzela in goal. Here is somebody who has won 5 championships. He knows how to close series, and there was some question, should have been Zierhofer rather than him. He definitely played. Maybe could have done the first goal over, but 18 saves in a playoff game on the road, that's what you expect. And then Lucas Roque on offense. And we've talked a lot about Boris Pardo, Nick Pereira, Frank Taillou this season, but Lucas Roque, I think his name deserves to be up there. Because what happens, Alex, Saturday, the Discipline Review Committee suspends him for game 2. And you want to talk about MVP caliber players not being on the field. It made a huge difference. Did it make a 13-goal difference? I'm not saying that, but it totally changed Baltimore's mentality and game plan not having him there. But guess what? Fresh legs. He comes into game 3, and you think a team that has just gotten destroyed 14-1, there's no chance they're going to win that 15-minute game. Oh, lo and behold, you have 2 other players plus him coming in, and Lucas Roque was the man of the match in that 15-minute game.
In the 14-1 thrashing, was there just the point, like, did Baltimore just kind of say, okay, look, we're not, clearly we've let this get away from us. Let's just focus now on what is going to be the mini game. I mean, was there that point where the final score just did not matter to them, and they just started looking ahead, basically?
Well, it mattered to Florida because Florida is a team that likes to go, go, go. And so what would have been interesting, and we saw it in last year's finals, is Florida has so many options, but their mindset is we want to score first. And so in that situation, Florida was looking to figure out how can we just make such a dominating performance in game 2 that we can walk over them in game 3, but it didn't work out that way, Alex.
Out of the teams remaining that Baltimore could face, from Milwaukee to Utica to KC, who's the team do you think that Baltimore matches up against that they would want to see in the next round?
I'll answer it 2 ways. On the field, Utica is the team that gives them the biggest challenges. I would say Baltimore would be probably most confident playing Kansas City because Baltimore beat Kansas City all 3 times in the regular season. But in sure entertainment of fan banter, a Baltimore-Milwaukee final, they'd have to get 6 moderators in the Twitch chat for the banter that would go between those fans. And so let's see how it plays out. But Utica has a lane in. I'd say every team has a lane in to the finals. There are no guarantees. And as Baltimore just found out, their fortress isn't necessarily a fortress. And so I think any of those teams could make it to the final.
Agreed. And I mean, of course, Utica beating Baltimore towards the end of the regular season as well on their home floor, which really was a statement game. So let's just quickly touch on Kansas City, Utica, which, as mentioned, is going on right now. But we're going to do what we can with this because the KC Comets are your squad. You and Nick Vassos are the broadcasting team for that. These are 2 teams that, in an interesting scheduling quirk, did not face each other all season long. So this is their first matchup. How do you think these 2 teams match up against each other?
They both like to score goals. They absolutely like to score goals. So you could make it about personalities and firepower Zach Reggett for the Comets, and somebody who has gotten a lot of MVP chatter from his fans and franchise Gordy Gerson, 7-game winning goals.
Oh, yeah.
He's been clutch this season. And so you could make it about them, but I think there are other players that become involved. I know I talk a lot about goalkeeping on Comets broadcast, but Andrew Coughlin has had a terrific year for UCFC. And with him, it's not just the shot blocking. He's dangerous on offense, 2 different ways. One, assist throwing the ball, but also from time to time, Coach Everton likes to push him up the field in a way, becoming a quasi-6 attacker. Watch him for sure on that side of the field. And for the Comets, this is what Neto lives for. He lives for the playoffs. I had an opportunity to interview him for Comet social media, and this is his chance to stand up. And so I expect a lot of goals, but I expect a lot of saves too. I see this as a 15-round matchup, and we'll see who's standing at the end.
A heavyweight championship bout, taking a lot of hits and see who's hitting the canvas first, right? One thing about Utica, and if they do take this game against Kansas City, and we talked about this last week as well, they have allowed the most goals of any team in the regular season that made the playoffs. So Coughlin saw a lot of leather this season. There's no question about it. He was dynamite, but Utica has got to tighten up defensively. I want to quickly ask you one more question about KC. The acquisition of Zach Reggett, what did it mean for this squad?
Well, it said probably 3 things. One is that Kansas City was ready to compete now for a championship and wasn't going to wait till next year to figure out the pieces. 2, I think it sent a message to the team that the expectations have increased and the way they were playing going into that part of the season wasn't enough. And I think for the rest of the league that this is a team that you're going to get a battle every single game because Zach Reggett is an intense competitor. Teams have been holding on to him. He's figured out in the last few games the connections with his teammates in terms of laying off the ball. 8 assists in those last 3 regular season games, Alex. So you can't just assume he's going to shoot on you. You're going to have to be a little bit more disciplined defensively. And that makes for an interesting sub-story there in tonight's game.
One of the greatest games of the season was, and I mean, he was so up for it, was when the Tropics came to KC right after Zach had been traded, and I think he put up 5 points in that game. He had a hat trick and 2 assists.
5 goals.
5 goals, pardon me. Unbelievable performance, man. I've never seen a player more pumped to do damage than he was. You love to get back to your former team, and Zach sure did it that day. Okay, we have got just over 5 minutes left in the show, so let's talk about awards. The voting is done. Awards are going to be announced at the completion of the conference semifinals. We all got our votes in. Just want to get your perspective on some of this stuff. Nick Pereira was the runaway scoring champion this year. It was phenomenal. He won it. I think the spread was 14 points over Frank Taillou. But on his own team, it was 50 points or something. It was massive. It was by far the largest from first to second on any team in the league. He dragged the Tacoma Stars into the playoffs, kicking and screaming. But Nick is not by any means a surefire guarantee to win MVP. Talk about your thoughts on MVP this year and who you think that the most worthy is.
So this is sort of an interesting topic because last year I was the voter for Nick Vassos and me. And I had the same challenge last year trying to figure out, do you look at a player who carries his team as a definition of MVP or somebody overall greatness? And I think Nick Pereira touched a couple boxes there this year, but we went in a different direction. In the modern era of indoor soccer, the goals are pretty massive. They didn't used to be nearly as high and as wide as they are today. To get a below 4.0 goals against average in today's game, that's Herculean. And so for us, we voted Boris Pardo MVP, and but we'll see where the voters go. It's hard to tell. I think that a lot of people get attracted by the goal scorer. So, and I think Nick Pereira made it a statement why he deserves it. We'll see who voted.
We'll see. So I don't need to ask you who your choice of goalkeeper of the year is then if you've got Pardo as MVP.
But we didn't split our vote. I mean, there's no doubt about it. And a 3.80 goals against average in the modern game
Yeah.
That's unbelievable. He doesn't stop as many shots as some other goalkeepers do, but he organizes his defense so well that he doesn't have to stop so many shots. And he doesn't get as much credit for how he reads the game. And he will be a great color analyst at some point if that's what he wants to do when he's done playing.
He was unbelievable. Second on the list in terms of goals against was William Van Zela. And this is where you look at the team that's in front of them and you say, okay, Baltimore was by no means as powerful as San Diego this year. On the tightest confines of any field in the MASL, Van Zela is going to face a lot of shots, and he did that this year as well. I thought it was an extremely impressive performance. Those two were my top goalkeepers throughout the year, Pardo and Van Zela. And the defender of the year, and this is a tough one because if you don't watch games from start to finish, if you're just looking at highlights, it's tough. Now, you get to watch the games from start to finish, being in your position as the broadcaster for the KC Comets. But is there one guy that really stuck out to you this year as the defender of the year?
So we had a tough pick too, because I think we bought into the San Diego defenders don't get enough credit because they're too easy to look at block shots as the only definition. That being said, I would not be surprised if Rafa Alves for Florida gets consideration leading the league in shot blots. But for us, there were a couple defenders that stood up for San Diego. In fact, I mean, they've got 4 that anybody could vote for: Cerda, Pino, Cardenas, and Rojo, and all were terrific. Let's just say that we voted for one. We voted for one of them as defender of the year, and we'll see where the chips fall. And if San Diego doesn't get defender of the year, I think it's probably because voters could have gone in a lot of different ways.
Right. Let's do one more then. And it was a disappointing to the season for Empire. Eddie P and I did a postmortem on them last week. I mean, 2 seasons in a row, crashing out right before the playoffs. I think it was 6 games in a row they lost this year and 8 games in a row they'd lost last year. But Frank Taillou, Golden Boot winner. Frankie is the king. He is what he is. He's unbelievable. He's a legend. Gabriel Costa. Was that your choice for Rookie of the Year? He was absolutely phenomenal this year.
With 2 weeks left in the regular season, Alex, I had pivoted to Chase Vosvik. We saw Chase Vosvik play. Nick Vassos and I did. We were calling a Sirius XMFC game in St. Louis, and he was terrific. But Costa was dominant this season. He didn't play like a rookie. He played like a veteran. And for me, he convinced me back. I think Nick was there already, but I think that Costa should be the lock for that award this season.
Kudos to Chase Vosvik, though, as well. In a very a tough situation on a team that was not that had a difficult season, and he did a fantastic job. But that's a tough one. But yeah, I put in my vote for Gabriel Costa. I just thought he was unbelievable. It's exciting, man. I'm excited to see how these games play out. I'm excited to see the winner between Chihuahua and Monterey, which we'll know fairly soon, and the winner between Kansas City and Utica. Either one of those teams is just it's going to be a fascinating matchup for them as they get through taking on Milwaukee. Milwaukee having sat for a while now. Are they going to be sharp when the first game rolls around, right? So we're gonna we'll see about that. But listen, we are out of time, man. Like that said, like you and I can talk forever about these stuff. We get going and a half an hour is nothing, right? But man, good luck to your Comets because, hopefully for your perspective, you guys get to call another game. It would be a great series if it was. But listen, you guys did a fantastic job all season long. Give my best to Nick Vassos and happy Easter, Passover, Ramadan, whatever it is, man. But I hope you had a great one with your family, Erik. And thanks for joining me today.
Really appreciate it. Thanks for everything you did this year, not just this show, but in the half. It gave fans an opportunity to study the game, not just on Monday nights, but throughout the season as they were watching on Twitch. So thank you, Alex.
Thank you. You guys did great calls all season. So great job with KC. And thank you for the compliment. I appreciate it, my friend. And thanks to everyone for listening. A reminder, MASL Monday, every Monday, 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific on Sirius XM FC channel 157. and MASL TV on YouTube and on Twitch. And a reminder, all through the playoffs, you can watch all MASL games live and the archive on Twitch. Thanks for listening, everyone. We'll see you next week.